The Weekend That Changed My Career Path, Part 2. Needless to say, it was a long morning, taking until 10 a.m. to get most of the paperwork completed. We received written commendations for that arrest and spent quite some time in court, but I believe the guy eventually pled to some charges, as I don't recall having gone to a full-blown court case. So about 6 p.m. Saturday evening, my phone rings. It's Sergeant Jones. "Brown, you and Jack sure do work good together. How about coming in about 9:30 or so? You've got some paperwork to finish up, and then go out with Jack, just for a couple of hours, of course." What can you do when you're called upon like that? After dinner, I went to the station and, if I recall, had to write a supplementary narrative to support the event. In fact, Sergeant Jones was having me write a narrative of what happened so that he could turn it around and use it as a nominating letter for a commendation that I would later receive. That done, we attended roll call, took some good-natured ribbing from the squad. "Hey, Sibel and Brown, not enough work to keep you busy? Have to go looking for stuff to get into?" Sort of gives you an idea of the majority's work ethic. Did our routine walk around of Scout 77 to ensure there were no additional dings, dents, or damage that we didn't want to be blamed for. Hopped in the car and headed back to Georgetown for another evening of adventure, just until the bars close and things quiet down, of course. It was now Sunday, September 19th. I was working on about 6 hours sleep since Friday morning. About 1 a.m., we were parked in front of a French restaurant at 3288 M Street. It's currently the Pizzeria Paradiso. And I was writing a series of parking tickets for some frequently violated infractions, when all of a sudden I'm aware of these 3 little black kids, I mean little, 10, 11, 12 years old, walking east on M Street. At 1 a.m. on a Sunday morning, with a brown paper bag under one arm, rubber gloves, a screwdriver, and other items clearly visible in their back pockets. "Hey, just a minute." I ran up to them. "We gotta go. We're gonna miss our bus. See? Here, I've got my token in my hand." Jack realized something was up and joined in. "What are you all doing out here at this hour?" "We've got to catch our bus," was about all they'd say. "What's in the bag?" Jack inquired. "Nothing." Well, there's a clue. Jack took the bag, opened it, and found 25 to 30 collector-grade comic books, all in plastic sleeves. Some were priced at $50 or more, if I recall. Well, it didn't take Kojak to figure out these kids had just burglarized a store along M Street, probably the Keybridge newsstand. Jack now had the kids secured in the back of our cruiser, the burglary tools and proceeds in the trunk of the cruiser. I volunteered to run down to Keybridge newsstand to see if I could find a broken window or door, while Jack got on the radio and asked for another unit to check the alley rear of 3326 M Street for a break-in. We're back sitting in the cruiser with the kids, getting their names and parents' names, when the area cop, J.W. someone, I can't recall his name, fortunately, comes over the radio and says, "Nothing found per Scout 77's request." Well, Jack and I weren't going to let this go, so a few minutes later, we made a sweeping U-turn on M Street, turned down 34th Street towards the canal, and left into what is now Katie's Alley. It was a real dumpy area back in those days. We pulled up behind the newsstand's address, and I got out with my flashlight. There were some old drunks or somebody that obviously lived above the series of stores who were all hanging out the back window of their place shouting, "We was wondering when you guys were going to show up. We've been calling for God knows how long." They said they'd called because they'd heard some noises coming from the B.A. Co. appliance store beneath them at 3330 M Street. Just about that time, J.W. pulls up in his cruiser and in a snarly, sarcastic tone yells to both Jack in the car and me, now up under the porch confronted with a busted door. I said, "I checked it out, and there ain't nothing there." "Oh yeah," I replied. "You didn't check too well because this place has been broken into." He punched the accelerator and sped off down the alley. Jack called for a crime scene unit, and we found where the kids had broken in through the B.A. Co. store, then crawled through the suspended ceiling into the Keybridge newsstand where they stole the collectible comic books. Case closed. "Have a juvie unit meet us at 2D. We're en route with 3. They were each charged with 2 counts of burglary too. That's nighttime burglary of a residence or a business while unoccupied. My notes show we were at the station at 8 a.m. that morning. Once again, 2 nights in a row, the team of Sabella and Brown had scored, and I was convinced I was the one with the nose for crime. I'd have to do something about it now. After my stint as an MPD reserve, I tried to stay in touch with a few of my old friends at the 2nd District. Corbin Weeks, the reserve coordinator, eventually retired, and I attended his retirement party. Regina Stitcher took his place, was now responsible for the 2D reserves, and I had frequent contact with her when I was establishing Neighborhood Watch in Foxhall Village in the early 1980s. I was still receiving letters of commendation from the U.S. Attorney's Office about the comic book caper, even after leaving for Fairfax County PD in January 1978. And I was still appearing in D.C. Superior Court in September 1978 for the Dumbarton Street sexual assault case a year later. There were several accounts of Jack Sabella's actions in the papers in the years that followed. One is an account of he and a fellow undercover officer confronting an armed man with a machete committing a robbery at 20th and K Street. The man charged them after letting go of his intended victim, and Jack shot him. He later died at GW Emergency Room. Subsequently, I heard from E.T. Smith, who lived in the Mason district where I served as both a corporal in 1981 and as a commander in 1995, that Jack Sabella had received a medical or mental retirement after being found alone in his car, or maybe his cruiser, along the Potomac, perhaps at Fletcher's Boathouse, having taken an overdose of sedatives. While I'm not sure of this, I may recall hearing that Jack later was successful in taking his own life back in Pennsylvania. One final D.C. Police Reserve recollection. In late 2013, I reconnected with my old garage band, the Tangerine Flake bandmate Bill Skinner. He'd written a letter to the Washington Post Sunday magazine about our encounter with Jimi Hendrix at the Ambassador Theater in 1967 or so. We've chatted via phone and email several times since then, recalling our days with the band, shared experiences at Western High School, and the fate or outcome of some of our acquaintances from those years. During one of these conversations related to what turns our careers had taken, he said, "I don't suppose you remember the day you had a table set up near Johnson's Flower Center on Wisconsin Avenue and Van Ness Street. I came by to see what you all were promoting, and probably not being recognized by you with a scraggly beard, and now about 10 years later, you sort of gave me a go away, don't bother me type look. Remember that?" Honestly, I had absolutely no recollection of that particular day, event, encounter, while I did recall other public events for the Boys Club, at shopping centers, and at Citizen Association meetings. I didn't recall an event on Van Ness Street near Johnson Flowers. I looked through my MPDC files and found April 23, 1977, CB, that's Citizens Band Radio, drive-by to advise citizens of the increased number of CB radio thefts and ways they could mark or otherwise ensure their safekeeping. Obviously, this event stuck with Bill Skinner for far longer than it did for me. I guess it must have left him with quite an impression, negative or otherwise.